Moses was a regular person with gifts in alignment with God. Through this alignment, the Holiness Code came into being. In this code, it is stated that people are to attempt to live the ways of God to the best of their ability. We try to be in alignment with God because the subtler forces of energy have the ability to lift others up. And just a quick side note, when it is spoken, you shall not, or do not, think of it in the context of by doing the opposite, you will accumulate a kind of residue on your spirit, and as this residue adds up over time, think of the karma complications that will arise. So, as Moses communicates God's will through these moral code laws, the population at this time was having difficulty avoiding repeated chaos, and they were in need. By following the codes, these are ways to get to the spiritual fruits often taken for granted. Most people do not know there are such things. So Moses gets the download of these laws from God for the people to begin to benefit by incorporating discipline to begin to see the fruits of their labor. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Be a holy people, because I am holy." When you collect from your harvest, do not go to the extreme edges, seeking to strip the entire land bare. As grapes fall from the vine, so is the way of nature. Let them be. Leave them for those in need, and those who can make use of what remains. Moses, in connection to the internal compass God provided him at birth, demonstrates that to know these codes is to know the simple, clear-cut way of reasoning. And by living this way, that is the way you were designed to live. Do not steal. Do not deal falsely. Do not lie to one another. Do not swear falsely by my name, littering the name of God, your Creator. Then he goes on to say to Moses, I am the Lord. Do not defraud your neighbor. If you are an employer, be at the ready to compensate your laborers. Do not wait until the next morning to pay them. Do not take advantage of others. He uses the example here of someone using abusive language to a deaf person. Note in the example above, this means being abusive to someone who cannot determine what is happening. We must act as if God is present. You must fear God. Then he says to Moses, I am the Lord. Do not render an unjust judgment. Do not act out of self-interest when working with people who have less. And do not take the easy road by deferring to the wealthy and the powerful with justice in mind. One is to deal with their fellow neighbor. Do not go around as a slanderer among your people. Do not profit by the blood of your neighbor. He goes on to communicate to Moses, I am the Lord. Do not hate in your heart any one of your kin. Do not deny or reject your fellow neighbor. Or in the spiritual life, what happens is you will accumulate guilt in your person. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you can love your neighbor as yourself. And then he goes on to communicate to Moses, I am the Lord. Christ Jesus is the foundation of the modern church and its teachings. We are God's temple because God's Spirit lives in us and we belong to Christ. Hence, we are called to build wisely from this immortal foundation, not for our own benefit, but for a higher collective experience where we all benefit. According to the grace of God, what is given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation, and someone else is building on it. Each builder must choose with care how to build on it. The immortal foundation that has been laid down and documented is Jesus the Christ. Do you not know that you are God's image and God's body, the temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in you? The Apostle Paul, being in the category of a master craftsman, uses high forms of philosophical reasoning that is linked to God's reasoning itself. Paul reveals the workings of God to the reader in this way. If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. For God's temple is holy, and you are that temple. Do not deceive yourselves. If you think that you are wise in this age, you must become fools, so that you may become wise. The Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that these thoughts are subtle, simple, not driven by a whim. Let no one boast about leaders in this earthly human existence. He goes on to say that all things are yours. Whether I or you or they, or whether the world or life or death, or the present or future, all these things belong to you, and you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to the Most High.